The Honourable Member for Essex.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I will be sharing my time today with the member from Timmins, James Bay, and I would like to thank him for his very important work on this particular issue and ongoing efforts to get to the truth for Canadians. I'd also like to give a nod to my colleague, the member from Victoria, for his excellent work on the justice file and the incredible level of competence and intelligence and compassion that he's brought to this entire affair over the past 6 weeks. I'm quite honored to be following in his footsteps as the justice critic for the NDP, and as always, very proud to stand as the member for Essex. So I rise to speak to the motion before us today to allow the member for Vancouver-Granville to speak her whole truth. Liberals want Canadians to believe that she's already had her opportunity, and they keep repeating the lines that she's had 4 hours to have her say. And that's good enough for them. Well, the truth is not, that is not going to get us to the truth, Madam Speaker. The former Attorney General and Justice Minister has said herself, both here in this chamber, publicly to media, that she would like the opportunity to come back to the committee and would in fact be available at invitation. We now know that the committee has made the unprecedented move yesterday to vote to end the study and to shut down the testimony about allegations into political interference with the Attorney General. And that's really the heart of why we're here, Madam Speaker. I hear my Liberal colleagues wanting to make legal arguments around precedent-setting, expansion of what people can speak about in orders in council. We're here to talk about political interference. We're not here to talk about the Shawcross. We're not here to talk about a lot of the things that the Liberals are trying to change the channel on. And quite frankly, I think Canadians are getting dizzy from them changing the channel, and they're running out of channels, unfortunately. And yet again today, there was a new development, and we saw the CEO of SNC-Lavalin who came out and blew apart the argument that has been put forward by Liberals, and in fact by the Prime Minister, that this is all about jobs and that he's just trying to protect Canadian jobs. Well, today, the CEO of SNC-Lavalin stated that he never told the Prime Minister that jobs in Canada were in danger. What? He never said that. So the jobs argument is not based in fact, but in the Prime Minister trying to turn that channel and protect the only job that matters to him, and that's his own job, Madam Speaker. So on BNN Bloomberg, when he was asked about, the CEO was asked about whether he threatened to move the headquarters out of Montreal, he said, no. Yes. And the reporter asked, where did this issue come up from, that this was a possibility? The CEO responded, I don't know what people make up. So, Madam Speaker, once again, we're finding bombshell after bombshell come out in this case, where the Liberals don't want to get to the truth. And now we know that the jobs argument is completely false. That this is not the argument that was made by SNC-Lavalin at all. Yep. And the CEO has been quite public about that. So now the Prime Minister needs to answer to Canadians about why he's decided to bend the truth and create this false argument around jobs and trying to protect them, which is quite ironic given the fact that he's turned his back on 12,000 Sears workers, GM Oshawa workers, postal workers. The list goes on and on of the jobs that this Prime Minister won't protect or won't go and fight for. So back to what happened in this Justice Committee, and I can't speak specifically to it, of course, because it was in camera. It was behind closed doors. We attempted at an emergency meeting last week to have the conversation about Ms. Wilson, the member for Vancouver-Granville, to come back to committee. And quite publicly, the Liberals used a crude tool to shut down debate, under the guise that they needed time to think about it, they needed time to come back to committee, they hadn't had time to speak to each other, they wanted to look at all the possibilities. And then on the eve of the Justice Committee meeting this week, to be in camera, behind closed doors, they send a letter not to the committee members, but they send a letter to the media saying there's nothing to see here, they've already made up their mind. Canadians can make up their mind based on what they now know, that's enough. They don't need to know anymore. Well, it won't come as a surprise, Madam Speaker, that New Democrats fundamentally disagree with the moves and the behavior of the Liberals on the Justice Committee. It was very clear to me in my new role in the Justice Committee that the members are more interested in damage control and protecting the Prime Minister than they are finding the truth. And that is what Canadians deserve. They flat out refuse to hear from the former AG again, upon multiple chances to have her come. And they've also refused to summon the majority of PMO staffers who are implicated by her testimony. So instead they voted just to move on, and they sent this letter on to the media, just basically saying there's nothing to see here. Madam Speaker, only 3 of the 11 people named by the former Attorney General have come to the committee. And we all know that Mr. Warnick actually came back again and had right of reply, something that Liberals are denying the former Attorney General from having the opportunity to do. So if she's seeking to have this right of reply, Madam Speaker, I mean, I can't fathom what it's like to be a Liberal sitting over on the benches with these members, and you're seeking to have your truth be told, and your colleagues are sitting around you saying, sorry, we can't let you. We're not going to let you. And it really speaks to the character, I think, of members of that particular caucus, Madam Speaker. Yeah. So, who haven't we heard from? Katie Telford, Chief of Staff to the PMO. Elder Marquez, Matthew Bouchard, Jessica Prince, the Chief of Staff to the former Attorney General, and the Prime Minister himself. So all of these people who were named by the former Attorney General haven't had an opportunity to come and clear their names, because certainly some egregious things were said about them. So one would think that, again, the Prime Minister would want his own staff to have the opportunity to clear their own names, to come and state what actually happened in their opinion. And I, like the member who spoke earlier, I have reserved my judgment because I don't know. Canadians don't know what has happened here. The Liberals are gatekeeping on the truth and not allowing people who are involved in this scandal to come and speak. And so there couldn't be any stronger argument, Madam Speaker, than for a full, independent public inquiry than there is following all of these revelations that keep tumbling out into the front pages of newspapers across our country. And I think, too, Madam Speaker, that, there is this concept that the Liberals are trying to create, that there is nothing to see here. We've done unprecedented things. We've done everything that we can possibly do. Well, that argument in this House of Commons certainly isn't being accepted by the opposition members. And I'll tell you that it's not being accepted by Canadians either. Everywhere that I go in my riding, people are talking about what's happening. People want the former Attorney General to be able to have her other half of her story be told. And that's being denied to her by her own colleagues. And Canadians see that clearly. They want the truth to come out, and they deserve that truth to come out. And I've never been more assured that a public inquiry is necessary. I want to talk about fairness. The former Attorney General has publicly requested the opportunity to return to the committee, which we now know won't happen. Liberals, again, keep saying she's come, she's testified for 4 hours, but Canadians know that there were strict limits on the period of time that she could discuss, and she stated that over and over during her original testimony, that, quote, my narrative stops here. I must reiterate to the committee my concern outlined in a letter to the chair yesterday. That is that Order in Council 2019-0105 addresses only my time as Attorney General of Canada and therefore does nothing to release me from restrictions that apply to my communications while I proudly served as the Minister of Veterans Affairs, end quote. So she herself has expressed to her own colleagues she would like to come back. And despite their feminist rhetoric, the Prime Minister continues to actively silence her. And this is especially unfair given the Clerk of the Privy Council, Michael Warnick, was allowed to testify twice. Why is there one set of rules for powerful men in our country and another for women? The government claimed they would be different, but the proof is in the behavior of this Liberal government, and women across Canada are not fooled. There's a reason only 26% of us are sitting in this House, Madam Speaker, and it's not because it's created the climate in the ultimate halls of power here for women to be able to speak their truth. What's happened in this very, horrible display for Canadians is that Canadians now know that corporations can get into the office of the PMO, they can influence legislation, and the PMO is willing to allegedly pressure the former Attorney General to bend the rules for Liberals. Yeah. Madam Speaker, Canadians deserve the truth, and it's time for Liberals to stop hiding it from them.
Questions and comments? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Families, Children and Social Development. Sorry.
As the person who holds that title, I'll respond. And thank you for the recognition. Through the chair to the member opposite, when I hear the arguments advanced by the other side, and disagree with some of them, don't attack the character of the individuals over the other side. I appreciate the principles and the points of law they raise, but I don't feel that same generosity spirit coming back, and I think it's important to try and rebuild the trust, because clearly that's clearly what's at stake here. But when I also hear them quoting articles selectively, it makes me understand why people might be reluctant to go in front of a committee, because their testimony is not being fairly reflected in the debate in this House. And for example, they cited the SNC-Lavalin executive today, who said very clearly he never spoke to the Prime Minister. But just as clearly said in the very same article, Bruce said that some of the 9,000 Canadian jobs in his company are in jeopardy without a resolution to the company's ongoing situation in Ottawa, that we're in a place here where it's not just about the 9,000 jobs at SNC-Lavalin, that there is a ricochet effect. You don't require a weatherman to know which way the wind is blowing sometimes. Sometimes those analyses don't have to come through the CEO. They can come through caucus members, and they can come through the popular understanding of what this means. Why doesn't the NDP quote the full article when it quotes the record? And why, if they don't intend to quote the full record of all these sorts of articles, why would we trust them to quote the full testimony at the hearings?
The Honourable Member for Essex.
I find it rich that the Liberals are heckling for us to tell the truth, Madam Speaker. And I think Canadians will appreciate the irony in that, given the current situation that we're in. That was a quote from B&M Bloomberg from an interview. Those were direct quotes, and I appreciate that the member opposite needs to be an apologist for his government. But I will not do that, and that is not why I was sent here by Canadians. And what we need to get at is the truth. And I want to tell you that when women who stand up to their bosses are fired and silenced, Canadians will be outraged. And that is what has happened, or has allegedly happened here, Madam Speaker, and the reason why we need to get to the truth. So certainly I understand why Liberals want to change the channel. Liberals want some place to hide in this. The jobs argument has been blown apart today. And I'm sure that there will be other articles tomorrow on the front page of the paper about the CEO of SNC-Lavalin, who has now revealed that he did not tell the Prime Minister that jobs were at risk. He did not say that, and we heard the Prime Minister repeatedly stand in this House and say that that was the case.
Questions and comments? The Honourable Member for Flamborough-Glanbrook.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It is a tongue twister. Madam Chair, in response to the question that was just raised, I want to quote a top anti-bribery official at the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, which, by the way, Canada is one of the founding members, says that Canadian government should not use the potential loss of jobs as a reason to shelve the criminal prosecution of Montreal engineering firm SNC-Lavalin. They've also, the anti-bribery working group has voiced very significant concern about the way this has been handled and about the fact that it should be an open and a transparent investigation. I wanted to ask the member if she feels that if the investigation has been open and transparent, and we can actually say that to the OECD, and how she feels about our reputation now coming into question by the OECD.
The Honourable Member for Essex.
Thank you, and I thank the member for his question. You know, this scandal is jeopardizing Canada's international reputation. The OECD's Working Group on Bribery is investigating this affair, and it was prompted by the former Attorney General's testimony. We heard that they were ringing alarm bells based on what was happening, but they were reassured because Canadians were studying it at the Justice Committee, which has now been completely shut down. So any reassurance that the OECD and the global community had that Canada was taking this seriously has been completely removed. This is why a public independent inquiry now is completely necessary. How else do we prove to the globe that we're serious about addressing these allegations? That we are not just sweeping this under the rug. And I want to say that it is so serious, and Canadians certainly know that. The OECD knows that. The question is, why do the Liberals not seem to know this?